Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, Joe, do you have $1?
Not on me, but definitely do have $1.
Well, you could definitely use $1 for this episode because we're going to be talking about some $1 auction draft players that Joe and I just can't stop drafting.
Hike!
All right, so we're going to be talking about some players that are just $1 that we think have some huge upside. And when you're doing your auction drafts, you have to think about strategically who are going to be those dollar players that you're targeting at the end of your drafts. It could really make or break your season, I think. Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, these guys probably would have been $1 players had you drafted them. Not saying that you're going to have that caliber of player in this type of draft in this league for 2024 season, but you got to be aware of it. So, Joe, let's talk about the first player for you. Who do you got?
Yeah, my first player I'm going to talk about is going to be wide receiver Jameson Williams, the Detroit Lions. And I know the biggest reason that he's at $1 is a lot of people have been burned by him. I know you were very interested in Jameson Williams' rookie year. Utilization just hadn't been there. He'd been disappointed with limited opportunities, but it seemed like kind of at the start of the second half last year, they started to, start getting Jameson Williams more involved. They targeted him more. I like that. They started utilizing him a little bit as a runner as well. So I think if that trend continues, he could have a decent season this year. And he's worth the $1 flyer. Josh Reynolds is no longer there. To me, they really don't have a wide receiver two outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have Sam Laporta. They throw it to Gibbs as well, but somebody else has got to step up at the wide receiver's position. And why not Jameson Williams?
I mean, yeah, he's a guy that you've been pounding the table for quite some time. You've really thought that based on what happened in the playoffs, that we might be seeing something new from Jameson Williams.
Yeah, I just like his opportunities and the fact that Ben Johnson started getting a little bit of got a little creative and figuring out how to get this guy the ball, and they started to target him deep down the field. I mean, we know he can get open, just a matter of him getting utilized. And now that they don't really, they have a void in this passing game at receiver, so I think this could be the prime time opportunity for him.
I mean, Jameson Williams played 12 games last year. Prior to that, in his rookie year, obviously he was recovering from the ACL. He didn't play as many games either. So Jameson hasn't been able to play a full season. And you have to think about this, and this is where I agree with you, which I like the upside pick. Goff threw 605 times last year, ended up completing 407 with a completion percentage of 67.3%. So if he's throwing it 575 times, yes, he has Laporta, he has Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he has Gibbs. But there's still a lot more targets that are still out there. And like you said, who is Goff gonna throw to? You've got guys like Khalif Raymond, right? Some guys like that. But to me, I agree with you. I think that based on just pure volume, Jameson Williams should be more involved in this offense in year 3.
Yeah, definitely. And, Jared Goff was second last year in terms of overall passing yards from the quarterback position. So, I mean, if the Lions, like you said, keep passing it, and Goff's been effective, and he was only second behind Tua with the second most passing yards in the NFL last year from the quarterback position.
So, first guy that I'm going to be talking about that I just can't stop drafting at $1 is wide receiver Curtis Samuel. I just really don't understand why he's this low. Maybe with training camp buzz and what have you, we'll start to see Samuel rise above the dollar. But it just doesn't make any sense with Stephon Diggs no longer there, Gabe Davis no longer there. Right, they're both gone. That frees up just based on last year alone. Right, you're looking at 221 targets. Now, I know people are excited about Dalton Kincaid, right? James Cook. But there's no way that their targets are going to exponentially increase, I don't think. Someone else is going to have to get the ball. So why people aren't talking more about Samuel is beyond me. He has familiarity with Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator. He has familiarity with the front office and Brandon Beane. He was back in Carolina when he was drafted there. I mean, looking at my projections, I've got him getting 107 targets, 75 catches, 795 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I also think he's going to get involved in the running game. We saw that in that 1 year way back when. I don't remember. It was 2019, 2020 when Curtis Samuel did that. I think he could have over 100 yards and a touchdown rushing the ball. And I think that could be a little conservative, honestly. I think that he has a possibility, he has a ceiling to do even better than what I'm projecting. So to me, a $1 bid for Samuel seems like a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, he is definitely interesting for $1. Like you said, just there's a lot of questions in this Buffalo Bills offense this year without having Gabe Davis, without having Stephon Diggs, all those vacated targets that you mentioned. Who's going to step up it? Is Coleman going to come in right in as a rookie and kind of be that wide receiver one? It is tough for rookies to do that. And Curtis Samuel, it'll be interesting if he can come right in and kind of, it seems like you've almost got him to be the wide receiver one for the Bills. Mm-hmm. So it would be interesting if he could just come over as a free agent and kind of be that for this offense.
Well, I'm definitely not as bullish on Keon Coleman. I don't think he's going to be as electric right out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, that honestly could make sense. Even though we have been seeing an easier transition for these rookie wide receivers coming from college to NFL of late, but that doesn't also mean that every rookie is going to perform well.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So, Joe, who's your second player?
And interestingly enough, I'm going to stay with this Buffalo Bills team, go with another wide receiver, and that's going to be wide receiver Khalil Shakir. And I get your argument for Samuel. He is a little older, so it could have my concerns there. But Shakir, I think he could have some opportunity here. He showed some flashes in games when he had the opportunity. You mentioned 240 plus targets out of this Bills offense is up for grabs. So why not the guy that's established himself? He's been on the team, kind of a mainstay to take the next step. And honestly, what I saw in the playoffs out of him was pretty impressive, especially that one catch that he had against the Pittsburgh Steelers, just his unwillingness to go down and after the catch get that touchdown. But, he only had 39 receptions last season, but he was able to average 7.2 yards after a catch per reception. And with wide receivers that had 30 plus receptions, that was third. Only Rashee Rice and Deebo Samuel had more yak than Khalil Shakir in terms of the receivers with 30 plus receptions.
That's interesting, and that means that he can do more with less, right? And right. I think that he really did look like the safety blanket for Josh Allen a few times, kind of reminiscent of what Cole Beasley did for the offense a number of years ago. So I do like that pick.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of $1, you get in a guy with the yak upside, and that's what you look for at the end of the draft, so the player with upside. And I think Shakir is a guy that's got enough intrigue and enough upside. It's worth $1 shot.
So my second player that is a $1 guy that I'm definitely drafting when I get the chance, running back Jalen Wright, the rookie for the Miami Dolphins. I think people are concerned because of that backfield, because you've got Raheem Mostert, you've got Devon Achane, who's the darling right now for this upcoming season. People expect so much because of how explosive he is. Well, Wright's pretty explosive in his own right. And no pun intended there. Yeah, right. But Raheem Mostert, they're saying that Wright might be kind of the replacement for Mostert. Well, Raheem Mostert is 32 years old. He played in his career. He's had 9 seasons. Okay, he has played 3 seasons where he's played the entire year. So only 3 out of 9. Other than that, he's missed games. So he's going to be 32 years old. And by far, he had a huge workload last year. Ended up having 209 carries, over 1,000 yards. I played 15 games. So the question is, do we anticipate that Mostert does that again this year? He could. Certainly he could. It's not looking that way in drafts because Mostert is still, people aren't believing it because it'd be a steal right now if you got him based on what his production was last year. So I'm not buying it. neither is the market. So to me, throwing a $1 flyer on Wright for, Mostert, who really hasn't been able to stay healthy his career, and Achane wasn't really healthy last year either. He kind of was in and out of the lineup. So throw a dart, get Jalen Wright. But I'm going to tell you, if you're going to get him, hold them for at least 5-6 games, because a lot of times people cut bait with their rookies way too quickly. And then all of a sudden, towards, it's week 7, week 8, these guys start popping off. People were saying, oh, Jahmyr Gibbs, panic. We got to get rid of them. They're not using them at all. And then we saw what happened there. So I think that Wright's got a huge ceiling based on that Miami Dolphins offense. So I think he's worth the flyer for $1.
Yeah, I agree. He definitely is. I mean, just like Achane a year ago. I mean, just talk about guys going to a good landing spot. Jalen Wright, this Miami offense is it's an absolute track meet, just built for speed. These guys got it. And to your point, I mean, there's got to be a massive amount of touchdown regression for Raheem Mostert this year. And, we'll see if he can stay healthy. He's a guy that's battled injuries over his career. So I think, Jalen Wright could be their future plan to replace Raheem Mostert, but I do think he's worth that dollar flyer for this year, just with his explosiveness and high ceiling that he has.
Now, Joe, we probably could have talked about a few more, but we stuck it to 3 each. So who's your final player for $1 for this episode?
Yeah, definitely was plenty of other guys in consideration. I mean, looking at the list that we had for dollar players, it was a pretty long list. But I chose to go with quarterback Bo Nix, and I think he's just. It's not look. You talked about Curtis Samuel. That's a homer pick too. So I'm going with Bo Nix, and talk about a guy who's just entering as a rookie, and to me in a great situation with Sean Payton, and Sean Payton selected him to go right with his system. I think he's got the ability to process the information quickly, run Sean Payton's offense the way they want it to be run, and they go ahead and draft his former teammate in Troy Franklin to add some explosiveness to the offense, so it's not just on Marvin Mims. And curious to see how he utilizes all of the receivers and how they kind of spread this ball around.
I want to disagree with you on this one. I hear what you're saying. I just don't know how fantasy relevant Nix would be right out of the gate in his rookie year. I think Sean Payton will rely heavily on the run game. I don't know how many attempts Nix is going to have. Now, Nix can run in his own right, which a dual threat quarterback can help. I just don't know if he's going to have the passing volume that really supports you from a fantasy perspective. But you're definitely going to be able to get him for $1. And look, we've seen crazier things, right? I mean, CJ Stroud, Houston Texans, right? People thought that he could be really good. I know you were a huge fan of his. You thought he was the best quarterback in the draft. You never make me live the day without hearing that as I pound the table for Bryce Young. But no one saw the Houston Texans offense have a meteoric rise after what Stroud was able to do. So Nix will not be Stroud. I'm not saying that. But anything's in the realm of possibility as far as what Nix could do.
Yeah, I mean, typically in a one quarterback league, I think Nix is worth a flyer as a, backup. I think he could do pretty well. I don't disagree with you. I know Sean Payton's going to run the ball. That's just his style. And the main thing is Broncos want to get that run game going to help out the rookie quarterback. But, I had him projected for 541 attempts over 17 games, which is just under 32 pass attempts per game. So looking at who you're going to be talking about next, if you think this guy's fantasy relevant, my projections aren't much different than what you've got for your guy coming up here.
Interesting. Well, yeah. So you're kind of spoiling the surprise here, but I'm going to be talking about a quarterback as well for my last pick. It's going to be quarterback Will Levis. I have him projected 559 attempts, 362 completions, 3,967 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and 13 picks. I think Levis has a good amount of upside. You've got now a new head coach, Brian Callahan, coming in, and we're going to find out. We've been talking about this before. If you've listened to our show, you saw the Steichen and the Nick Sirianni, right, combo. We thought that Sirianni was the mastermind. It looks like Steichen really was the mastermind because the Eagles' offense went into disarray, and Steichen was able to do all what he's able to do with Gardner Minshew. people are really excited about Anthony Richardson and Steichen moving forward. So you had Callahan and Zach Taylor. They've been together for quite some time, working with Joe Burrow and that Bengals offense that has done wonders. He's leaving now. He's coming to Tennessee. They wanted to change the whole philosophy of how they're doing things in Tennessee, where Vrabel was ground and pound and tough defense. So he's got a lot of good weapons now. He's got DeAndre Hopkins, who he had last time and showed great rapport with. They go ahead and pay big money to get in Calvin Ridley. And then they also have Tyler Boyd, who he's been a great slot receiver, has familiarity with the scheme with Brian Callahan. And they've got even fourth guys, too. They got guys like Kyle Phillips, who I think is kind of interesting. They got Treylon Burks, a former first-round pick, who kind of seems like he's on the bubble. They brought in Tony Pollard. They've got Tyjae Spears. So they drafted an offensive tackle first round in the draft to beef up that offensive line. So there's a lot going right for the Titans as far as on paper what could happen. So I think Levis, if he could put it all together, he could surprise people. So I think he's worth the $1 flyer. Is he going to win you your leagues? Is he going to be your QB1? Probably not. But hey, for $1, why not take the flyer?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I mean, we're talking about dollar flyers at the end of the draft here. We're not calling these guys league winners by any stretch of the imagination, although some of those wide receivers we mentioned have a better chance than the quarterbacks we're talking about. But in a traditional one quarterback league where you tend to fade the quarterback position and just kind of go cheap, we're talking about some cheap dollar quarterbacks that could be decent, quarterback 2 and a bye week fill in at the very least.
I mean, based on your strategy heading into the draft, it's not crazy to say, hey, I'm going to roll with Will Levis as my quarterback. Now, it's a gamble because if he isn't any good, then you got to play the waiver wire game. But, some people are big fans of that. I've played the quarterback roulette before. I feel like I've got burned from time to time. It looks like a great matchup on paper. And all of a sudden, Dak Prescott plays the Arizona Cardinals or Houston Texans, and he absolutely just puts a goose egg up there. So it's like the NFL is so unpredictable from week to week. Any team can show up when you're least expecting it. So but I don't think it's wild. I think you could say, hey, I'm going to do $1 for Levis. I'm going to use all the rest of my money for skill players. Could that win you your league? It's possible. I think it's I think it's risky. I personally wouldn't do it. But that's where these, if you're going to go studs and duds, especially, you're not going to have a lot of money on your bench. So you've got to really think about who it is you want as your $1 players, because you're not going to have money to spend to beef up your bench.
Yeah, definitely. As we've witnessed that with our auction mock draft strategy there.
Without a doubt. So that does it for this episode where we talked about some players that we just can't stop drafting. These $1 players at the end of your auction drafts that we think could really help your team and have immense potential. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.